So we got some news today that I wanted to give my thoughts on. Obviously, I'm doing a fucking video on it, of course. So let's talk a bit about this news. And it's usually stuff I don't... I do talk about comic news on a lot. Probably more than I have in a while. But this really stuck out to me because it leaves a lot of, like... There's two ways to look at this. And that is the future of the Batman comics. Now... I'm already, like, looking at videos that have already been posted of people going like, oh, it went woke, so DC kicked him off and stuff like that. I was like, dude, first off, that's not what happened. Secondly, there's a lot more to this that we have to unpack. So, there's some good and there's some bad, but at the end of the day, I think, I'm more mad at the corporate... you have to understand that DC, at the end of the day, is a business. And DC has made some decisions. Now, some of them are good, some of them are bad, and I'm not saying, oh, the bad one was I Am Not Starfire. That was an alternate universe book I don't even bother with. Like, it was an alternate universe book. It was just part of a line that is part of, like, a bunch of Elseworld story, young adult comics, which I was like, alright, whatever, it's there. That's all I'm going to talk about for I Am Not Starfire. It was literally like, oh, it's there. It's not for me. Actually, if you want to read a good, like, Elseworld one of that young adult line, there's a really good Victor and Nora storyline that's actually, like, it was really wholesome. And because if you really love Mr. Freeze as a character, that does some great stuff. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. So yeah, you have to understand at the end of the day that DC Comics is a business at the end of the day, and sometimes that makes people unhappy to work with, and they have to go their own way. Case in point, James Tynion it's been announced that James Tynion is not only quitting the Batman run, but he's also quitting DC Comics in general. Now, Tynion is a interesting writer because James Tynion, for me, is a very, like, mixed bag. Sometimes he does really good stuff that I really enjoy. Other times he's like, it's alright. I think, like, his later work is there's a lot of good there. There is some problems. As much as I enjoy the Batman Ninja Turtle comics, I do see some glaring problems in those comics. And I've actually met the guy. I actually did an interview that never got uploaded because of problems. But yeah, because it wouldn't upload, and it was supposed to be on a channel I did with my friend Craig. Most of you guys probably don't remember that, but I did, like, another channel that's gone now because of reasons. But I did do an unaired interview with Tynion. He was a very cool guy to hang out with, and he was absolutely totally down with doing interviews for nothing. He was just there to do, like... He just loved talking about his work, and I thought that was really cool. So, I'm not trying to shit on James Tynion at all. He's a very cool guy. I'm just saying, like, he's a mixed bag for me personally. But the one thing I've been really liking about his work is his Batman comics, because coming off of Tom King's work, and as someone who does like a lot of Tom King work, I will admit that there was a lot of damage control by the end of that comic. And Tynion was doing some really cool stuff with Batman. He was basically, Batman had to live on his own. He had to live, like, without Alfred or without any money because of Joker War. And he was basically, like, Batman was in a rebuild mode, and he doesn't have the cops with him. The city's not on his side. There's a lot of new villains coming out. Probably the one thing that did bother me was that there was just a slew of villains that Tynion and the people Tomasi over on Detective Comics were really, like, working on. They were just a slew of them, and I was like, this is like getting one more day level of villains that no one's going to care about. But what was interesting to note is that characters like the Unsanity Collective, Miracle Molly, the Ghostmaker, they were all instead of Batman, like, doing the age-old, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you and then, throw you in prison, so we'll do this again in 3 months, see you later. It's more like Batman was, like, reaching out and caring about people. He was like, it's very much like the Batman I always love, the representation of Batman that I've always enjoyed of. He's dark and scary, but, like, he wants to help you. And Batman's basically, like, been doing this very much humanization of Batman after Tom King basically made him a robot by the end of the comic. But, like, I really was enjoying a lot of what he was doing, of, like, Batman being like, oh, I get it, you're all mentally ill, and you're all mad at the system. Oh, duh! I wasn't helping you, I was hurting you. Sorry. So, that's what I've been really liking, is that Batman Bruce was more or less this human character, and it was dealing a lot with Batman, taking a hard look at his own life and going, holy shit, I was awful. Like, I've been... This is what I've been doing to people? Oh my god. Oh my god, am I the bad guy? Like, it was like that, and I've been really enjoying it. So it is kind of a kick in the balls to know that Tynion is quitting not only his run, because apparently he had done a deal for, like, doing a 5-year Batman run. It was like, that was how it was, a 5-year run, but now he's quitting not only them in DC, they haven't really been open about it. What we do know is that Tynion wanted to do his own creator-owned comics, which has been kind of a very big thing as of late with, like, Scott Snyder and Saladin Ahmed over at Marvel, but he is still working Ahmed is still working at Marvel. So there is, that, but I don't know how long Ahmed is going to stay at Marvel until doing that. And it's very much like it's very reminiscent of what Image Comics was, of the formation of Image Comics, where a bunch of writers and creators left Marvel, said F you to DC because we're burning that bridge anyway, so might as well do it, and went off to do their own comics to varying degrees of success. But, Image, like, in hindsight, Image didn't have the best start, but look at it, Image now is probably one of the biggest probably the biggest independent comic out there. So, independent comic line out there, and its sales do sometimes rival Marvel and DC. And Tynion really wanted to do his own own stuff. Snyder's been doing that, and now Tynion is going to be doing that over on, I think, Comixology, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, but as far as that, I have no other knowledge than Tynion just quit. He was done. I don't know if it was creator differences or if there was corporate meddling. I know you're probably going to see a lot of videos out there talking about, like, oh, the wokeness was too much for DC and they canceled it, and this is what's going to destroy DC is the wokeness. I'm telling you right now, it had nothing. What we know so far is that it had nothing to do with it. Tynion was... all we know is that Tynion just left DC, he's quit DC, and he's going to be doing also a newsletter. I think he is doing a newsletter for another, like, independent company, if I am not mistaken. But other than that, we don't know the full details yet. And we probably won't know the details now that I think about it. We probably will not know all of the details to any of this. Like, that's just between, writer and company. That's sometimes how it goes. So my biggest fear, I am happy for Tynion to being like, look, I want to do my own stuff and I'm going to go it my own way. I'm very respectful for that. What I'm worried about now is that they are just going to... DC is going to hit the panic button and put everything back to status quo for Batman. And that's what really bothers me, is that Tynion... when Tom King ended his run and Tynion was coming in, my initial thought was, oh, they're just going to have Batman, bring everything back. Like, they're just going to Alfred's going to come back to life or something like that. Who knows? But the thing is that Tynion didn't. He's like, no. City of Bane, all of that Tom King run, it's all there. We're still having stuff with him and Catwoman. We're still doing stuff and working off of the Tom King run and we're going to expand on it and also have Batman have a hard look at himself along the way. So it wasn't like going back to status quo. It was like, oh, we're just continuing the story. I was not expecting this. And that's what I'm worried, is that DC is going to hit the panic button, and maybe even out of spite, because again, DC and Marvel have been known to spite creators when they leave. Go look at, what they did with several writers. Marvel was very spiteful in the 90s, and kind of spiteful now. So maybe they'll hit the panic button and be like, okay, new writer, here's what you gotta do. Because here's the thing. Even though writers do have, like, pitches and all that, there is corporate meddling. And I do have a feeling that maybe that had a hand in what Tynion really wanted to do with Batman. So my fear right now is that they're going to have a writer who is going to do some stuff and completely retcon and status quo Batman again. Like, he's just going to go back to, Batman, being this gritty loner and, a millionaire again, and somehow Alfred is a robot or clone or who the fuck knows. Maybe they'll bring him back with magic. Who knows? But it just kind of takes away. And I know comics have been notorious for going back to status quos multiple times. I am very aware that is a very common thing in comics. But like, I kind of don't want Batman to go back to being the billionaire playboy. I don't want him to go back to square one when we've been seeing probably the fastest and the best character growth we've seen with Batman in a long time. Like, again, Tynion, as I said earlier in the videos, that Tynion can be a diversive writer, because sometimes there's there is some stuff he's been really good at, and I think his craft has only gotten better with time. But then his earlier work is like, that's a mixed bag. But there was a general step in the right direction for what he was doing with Batman, and now that's what I'm more concerned about, is that DC's just going to get some writer on there and be like, here's what you're doing. You can throw your pitch out and do it, but this is what you're also going to do, and we'll pay you for it. Because, as I've said throughout this video, is that DC Comics at the end of the day is a business, and that's what really bothers me about this. Now, personally, what writer I would like to see on this is Tom Taylor. I think Tom Taylor, who's been making a really big name at DC and at Marvel. He's now writing the John Kent Superman book. He's also been doing Injustice, of course, Deceased. That's his biggest thing, and I think it'd be really cool, since now he's doing a Superman book. I think it'd be kind of fun to have him do the main Batman book too, have Superman and Batman. I personally would love to see him do a Superman Batman book. No disrespect to Joshua Williamson, but I would really like to see him do Superman Batman. But I'm just afraid of the meddling and whatnot. So you guys tell me in the comments below, what do you guys think what do you think the future holds for Batman comics? Are you nervous? Are you scared? What do you think? What are your thoughts on all of this? I'm not blaming Tynion. I'm just wishing him all the best for his future endeavors, because doing your own stuff is terrifying, let me tell you. So anyway, just all of that. So once again, I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.